Vladimir Putin's war, launched in 2022, was based on a single assumption: economic resilience. But when the West responded with unprecedented sanctions, the Kremlin had a plan B: oil and gas. Putin and his inner circle believed Russia was an energy superpower. This belief would be supported by a massive shadow fleet targeting Asia, Latin America, and the global South, rendering the West's moves ineffective. The war machine would continue to be financed by oil revenues, and on the night of November 10th, Ukrainian forces broke the lock on the port of Tuapse once again. Ukraine had launched a multi-pronged attack. Social media accounts also claimed that drones were flying towards Smolensk and Rostov in the east, Crimea and Krasnodar in the south, and St. Petersburg in the north. No confirmation of an attack towards St. Petersburg has been received yet. However, there are images showing the attack on Tuapse. Here's the moment. On the night of November 10th, Ukrainian naval drones are performing a suicide dive toward Pier 167, the very heart of the Tuapse port. Ukrainian social media accounts shared footage from last night of the alleged explosion. The post purportedly shows the moment a naval drone or FLAMINGO cruise missile exploded during the nighttime attack on the port of Tuapse. Before these footages, an image of the crater allegedly formed as a result of the explosion was shared. Pier 167. Why is this pier important? This is no ordinary pier. It is one of the main loading points for Russia's oil exports in the Black Sea. And according to information leaked by Ukrainian intelligence, Dnipro official, do you know what was waiting at that pier? Tankers loaded with crude oil and fuel ready for shipment. This attack targeted not just a pier, but a loading facility vital to Putin's shadow fleet and millions of dollars worth of oil. But that's not the real story. The real story is how and why this attack was carried out now. This was the second step of a trap. The Russians fell right into the trap the Ukrainians had set. This is the image that started it all. The date is November 2nd, 2025, just 8 days before the November 10th attack. Satellite images released clearly show the destruction left by the first attack on the port of Tuapse. Images taken by Planet Labs on Monday and shared by tankertrackers.com show black oil drifting from the docks where the Chai and Coastbuster tankers were moored during the attack. Containment barriers, orange rigid barriers, were also visible. No oil is visible on the surface in the inner harbour where the Pollux tanker docked. It is noteworthy that all three ships were still in place as of the morning of November 3rd. This first attack was a preparatory strike. Ukraine tested the port's defenses, destroyed the piers, and most importantly, inflicted heavy damage on a critical pipeline facility. Look at the damage identified by experts in the images. Transneft facility damage. The main pump and storage area where the pipelines reach the sea has been hit. Tanker damage. A tanker anchored in the port has been directly damaged. Massive oil spill. This is the most important. The damage is so extensive that thousands of tons of crude oil have leaked into the Black Sea. This is not only an economic disaster, but also an ecological one. This first attack had already reduced Tuapse's operational capacity to below 50%. So, what did the Russians do? Panic. Billions of dollars in exports came to a sudden halt. The war machine urgently needed money, and they did what was predictable. In a panic, they immediately began repairs to restore the facility's reputation and Putin's invincible image. Transneft, the Tuapse terminal operator, pressured its teams to repair the damage in record time. They began working day and night. They rushed to repair the pipelines and get the port back up and running. They sent their best engineers, most expensive equipment, and all their resources to Tuapse to repair the damaged Transneft pipeline and Pier 167. The Russians thought Ukraine wouldn't strike the same spot twice. This was a hubristic reflection of classic Russian military doctrine. It was a huge mistake. They probably temporarily relaxed the air defense systems in that section of the facility during the repair work, or at least focused all their attention on the repairs. And right then, Ukrainian intelligence knew that the moment they had been waiting for months had arrived. Now let's return to the night of November 10th. As Russian engineers were finishing the repairs, or thought they had finished, Ukrainian naval drones struck the same spot, Pier 167, and the Transneft facilities, this time with much greater force. This is military genius, an intelligence victory, and flawless timing. This is double the cost. This is double the humiliation. The Ukrainians destroyed not only millions of dollars worth of equipment and oil, but also the millions of rubles, expertise, and time spent on that repair. They sent Putin and his oligarchs this message: everything you try to repair, we will destroy again and again. This attack is a dagger plunged into the heart of Putin's shadow fleet operation in the Black Sea. As you know, Putin created an uninsured, unidentified shadow fleet of hundreds of ships to finance the war and circumvent sanctions. Tuapse was one of the main loading ports for this fleet. Not anymore, because this attack proves that Ukraine will not allow any activity at the Tuapse port. As of November 10th, the Tuapse port is closed. Without that pier, without that pipeline, tankers cannot be loaded. The tap on billions of dollars in oil revenue has been turned off from the south. However, the coordinated attack on November 10th was not solely about oil money. That same night, almost simultaneously with the explosions in Tuapse, drones reached Jankoy in northern Crimea. The target? A massive 330 kilovolt electrical substation. This was no ordinary substation. Jankoy is Crimea's main logistical and military hub. This substation supplied power not only to civilian settlements but also to Russia's main military airbase. The railway power systems that run the military supply lines to the Zaporizhia and Kherson fronts. Command and control centers in Sevastopol and other bases hosting the Russian Black Sea Fleet, its remnants. Striking this substation meant severing the nerves leading to the brain of the Russian occupation force in Crimea. And as these nerves were severed, the arteries leading to the front were also being cut from within. During the same days, pro-Ukrainian Atesh partisans carried out another daring sabotage operation in the heart of Crimea, near Simferopol. As confirmed by Ukrinform, this line is the main artery through which Russian forces transport ammunition, fuel, tanks, and equipment to the Kherson and Zaporizhia fronts. Everything coming from the Crimean bridge is distributed to the front via this line. The partisans destroyed the rails and signal boxes, halting supply trains for hours, perhaps even days. During the same attack, a group of Ukrainian suicide drones struck the Hvardyskie oil depot in Crimea, which is under Russian occupation. This was one of the last remaining oil depots in Crimea. More than 90% of Crimea was experiencing a severe gasoline shortage. The crisis in Crimea had become so dire that theft had spiraled out of control, with even flour theft becoming commonplace. Previously, people would steal gasoline from their neighbors' cars at night. Now, it's flowers in broad daylight. At the same time, Ukrainian suicide drones struck infrastructure at the Likovska train station in Russia's Rostov region. Russian TV journalists were furious as refineries, ports, and train tracks were hit. Russian propagandist Solovyov is furious that Russia has shown no reaction whatsoever to the destruction of its refineries.
Сколько раз на этой передаче я поднимал вопрос о ПВО? Нет, я понимаю, что, наверное, гениальная идея отключать мобильный интернет.
The Kremlin spokesperson cannot understand why these pieces always hit their target and continue to systematically destroy the Russian oil industry. The Russian people would be fed propaganda that everything is fine, sanctions don't affect us, our economy is strong. There were two main physical gateways through which this massive financial operation flowed: St. Petersburg and Leningrad, and the Black Sea. These were the keys to the shadow fleet operations and Russian oil going out into the world. According to Putin, these strongholds were impregnable. They were thousands of kilometers behind the front lines. They were protected by S-400s, Pantsirs, the Baltic Fleet, and the Black Sea Fleet. The shutdown of these ports and refineries was the Kremlin's nightmare scenario, as it would mean the war budget would be wiped out. And Ukraine implemented a long-term, two-stage economic strangulation plan to turn this nightmare scenario into reality. Ukraine's strategy was simple: to target, one by one, these two main arteries that kept Putin's war economy afloat. Their goal was to render the shadow fleet useless in the ports, deprive Russia of billions of dollars in revenue, and, most importantly, to debunk Putin's lie of economic stability to his own people by setting fire to those very strongholds. To understand how systematic this operation is, we first need to go back to September 2025 and see how the North was brought down. It all began in September, far from the noise of war, in Leningrad Oblast, Putin's homeland. The Ukrainian security service launched coordinated and highly specific attacks on the northern fortress. The first target was the Primorsk oil port, struck on September 12th. Now, Primorsk is no ordinary place. It is one of Russia's largest oil ports and the final stop on the Baltic pipeline system. Its annual capacity exceeds 58 million tons. Ukrainian intelligence did not strike a warehouse or empty space at the port. Reports and SBU sources confirm that the strike targeted the main pumping stations and loading infrastructure where shadow fleet ships are loaded. Do you know what this means? It means blocking the main artery to the heart. Without those pumping stations, oil cannot be transferred from the pipeline to the tanker. Those massive tankers worth billions of dollars are forced to sit idle in that port as empty metal hulks. With this strike, Ukraine crippled Russia's main export capacity in the Baltic in a single night. Shipments stopped. This was a massive slap in the face to Putin's energy superpower image, delivered right in his own backyard. The elites in St. Petersburg saw that Putin couldn't even protect his most basic economic assets. So, what was Putin's response to this loss? The Russian media remained silent, but Ukraine did not stop. A second blow to the northern fortress was on its way. Just 2 days later, on September 14th, Ukrainian drones targeted the massive Kirishi oil refinery in the Leningrad region. The details of this attack show how cleverly the operation was planned. According to a Reuters report at the time, the target was not just any corner of the facility, but the main technical unit, which accounts for 17 to 20 million tons, or about 40% of the refinery's total annual capacity. Now, this is a very critical detail. Ukraine is not only preventing Russia from selling crude oil, it also prevents Russia from processing crude oil into much more profitable products such as diesel, gasoline, and jet fuel. What does this 40% capacity loss mean? Less export revenue. Because refined products are much more expensive than crude oil. This means a sharp cut in the profit margin that goes into Putin's war budget. Kirishi does not only work for exports, it also meets the gasoline and diesel needs of all of northwest Russia, including St. Petersburg. This blow is one that ordinary Russian citizens will feel at the gas station. It is the refutation of Putin's "the war is far away" narrative, right at the gas pump. The diesel and jet fuel produced by these refineries also goes to Russian tanks and aircraft in Ukraine. By the end of September, the picture was this. The northern fortress, namely Primorsk and Kirishi, was badly wounded. The Baltic gateway was closed. So what did this situation force Putin and the state oil pipeline monopoly Transneft to do? To put all their eggs in one basket. They were forced to urgently shift all export operations and all shadow fleet logistics to the Black Sea, namely to the ports of Tuapse and Novorossiysk, the southern fortress. The southern fortress suddenly became the sole lifeline of the Russian economy. For Putin, this was no longer just vital, but indispensable. The Black Sea Fleet and air defense systems were ordered to protect this area at all costs. However, what Putin failed to realize was that this was not a strategic retreat, but the first step toward the second phase of a trap set by Ukraine. And so, the second phase of the game began. The entire burden now rested on the Black Sea's shoulders. Ukrainian intelligence closely tracked the Russians' panicked logistical shifts. The target? Tuapse, one of the most critical points of the southern fortress. As northern ports were hit, Tuapse's importance multiplied. It became one of the main outlets for Russian oil exports. For Putin, it had to be untouchable. Russian propaganda claimed that the Black Sea Fleet and air defense systems protected it like a fortress, and that it was impossible for Ukrainian naval drones to pass Crimea and reach it. But Ukraine had penetrated both the Leningrad port and Tuapse. So why is this situation devastating for Putin? Because Putin is trying to send a message to the West and his own people that our resources are infinite, we can repair everything, we will win this war through attrition. But Ukraine is sending Putin's people and elites the exact opposite message. Your leader cannot even protect his most valuable economic asset. We don't even have the capacity to repair. The moment we repair, it is destroyed again. This is not the image of a superpower, but of a helpless state. The loss of billions of dollars in export revenue is no longer a temporary problem, but a permanent disaster. The stability Putin promised his people has been reduced to ashes amid the flames at the Tuapse port. What does the permanent closure of Tuapse mean? It means Russia's entire shadow fleet oil operations in the Black Sea are now squeezed into a single major port, Novorossiysk. And what has become of Novorossiysk? It is now the primary, choked bottleneck for attacks on Ukraine, a massive and singular target. Putin has, with his own hands, turned his entire economic asset into a single target. Worse still, Putin's shadow fleet is now a zombie fleet. After these attacks, are there any ship captains who will agree to go to Tuapse and soon Novorossiysk? More importantly, are there any international insurance companies that will insure those ships? You cannot sail a tanker without insurance. Ukraine is physically achieving what Western economic sanctions have failed to do. It is stopping Russian oil exports. These ports have now been declared high-risk war zones under international maritime law. This is not just hitting Putin's budget, it is also hitting Putin's allies in India, China, and the global south. The countries waiting for that oil are seeing that Putin is now an unreliable supplier. Putin is also falling out of favor in the eyes of his allies. This is the biggest strategic outcome of the entire operation. The entire regime Putin has built over more than 20 years was based on the doctrine that Russia is an energy superpower. He threatened Europe with gas. He tried to rein in the world with oil. He used energy as a weapon. Now Ukraine has turned that weapon back on Putin. Both the northern fortress and the southern fortress have become dysfunctional. Ukraine has proven to the entire world that Russia's energy superpower strategy is a paper tiger. Russia's economic strongholds are vulnerable and unable to protect the main assets that finance its war budget. This is not just a military defeat. This is the collapse of Putin's entire geopolitical identity. The war is no longer far away for Russia. The war is in Putin's hometown of St. Petersburg. The war is in Tuapse, right next to Sochi, where Russians go on vacation. The war is in every corner of Crimea, which they call Russian soil. The Russian people are now forced to ask these questions. If we cannot protect our most secure, most strategic oil ports, St. Petersburg, Tuapse, what can Putin protect? Every explosion, every burning refinery shows the Russian people the truth a little more clearly. Putin's war is not enriching Russia, it is suffocating Russia. This was the story of two castles, and both fell. So what are your thoughts on this matter? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay updated on new videos, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to turn on notifications. Thank you for watching.